Hey guys, it's Tyler, and this is a long overdue review, but actual review this time, of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Uh, I find in the rush to get reviews out of new games, people don't actually end up reviewing them, they end up giving first impressions on them. My impression of this game has changed quite a bit since my first impression of it. That is to say, it's become more negative the more I've looked at it, the few times I've played it. For context, I was a playtester for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, as in I went to Paizo's headquarters and playtested there, and not for the free playtest. So, if I say something that you go, what, that's not the case, I might be misremembering something from the playtest. In short, I want to answer 3 questions with a series of videos because I'm not going to be able to cram it all in one. I have no script. That's just the fact of the matter. Those 3 questions are: is this a problem in first edition in the first place that they're trying to solve? Does it actually, the mechanic, actually set out what it's aimed to do and solve a problem in first edition? Lastly, what do you lose from going from first edition to second edition? Ideally, we should lose nothing, but because Pathfinder first edition was over a decade old and had consistent content releases up until the launch of second edition, unfortunately you lose a lot. So, having answered that third question, the game better give us quite a bit. I find it lacking. I wanted to start with the book's organization. Now, if you're doing this online, the organization is less of an issue. However, I'm reviewing the core rule book, not the review, the core system reference or system resource document. So, we introduce with what is a role playing game and some flavor text. Love that. Pathfinder is a fantasy tabletop role playing game, RPG, where you and a group of friends gather to tell a tale of brave heroes and cunning villains in a world filled with terrifying monsters and amazing treasures. Ideally, you are only telling a tale after the game is actually finished. If you set out to tell a tale, you're going to get frustrated by the results of the die mechanics not telling the story you wanted to tell, right? More importantly, Pathfinder is a game where your character's choices determine how the story unfolds. Ah, there we go. That's fantastic, right? Now, we were making fun earlier about how, yeah, tabletop RPG isn't about choose A or choose B. Do you want the Mass Effect 3? Do you want the blue ending or the green ending? But yes, this is important. The player's choices are determining how things end up, and the die mechanics as well on that. They talk about the setting for a little bit, tell us what a role-playing game is. I think this would be an interesting thing to dive through in a few different places. So, what is a role-playing game? Role-playing game is an interactive story. Okay, let's see where they go with that. Where one player, the game master, I like that they mentioned the game master as a player, nice, sets the scene and presents challenges, while other players take the roles of player characters and attempt to overcome those challenges. Yeah, that's really it, isn't it? They did it. They described roleplay in basically a single sentence. I don't know that I love the usage of interactive story, but sure, close enough. Um, Danger comes in the form of monsters, traps, and the machinations of adversarial agents. Good usage. But Pathfinder also provides political schemes, puzzles, interpersonal drama, and much, much more. Game is typically played in a group of 4 to 7 players. Seven's a lot. With one of those serving as the GM. I'm glad they're not talking about an 8-person game, because good lord. The GM prepares, presents, and presides over the game's world and story. We were so close. We were so close. If you mean meta plot, maybe, but let's use very specific words here so that people aren't writing stories just for characters to make, a couple of, set to decide, oh, I think the palace should be blue or purple, when you set out to write a story, you end up making a very surface level choices as player characters. That's the problem here, right? As each scene leads into the next, each player contributes to the story, responding to the situations according to the personality and abilities of the character. This is a little bit the opposite of the way that Max and the rest of us in general in the 4D space like to present things. That's not to say it's necessarily wrong, but it's more world is proactive, characters are reactive. We would just like the opposite, players proactive, world reactive. When I say players there, I mean player characters, obviously. Well, both, But that's not necessarily, just terrible. Dice rolls combined with pre-assigned statistics add an element of chance and determine whether characters succeed or fail at actions they attempt. What I would like to include there is you don't gotta do that, right? Flow of the game, overall I'd give us like a 6, 7 out of 10. Compared to the way most games explain to you how to roleplay, I'm actually fairly impressed here. I don't think I've ever read this. I think I just glanced over it because I've played a few of these games before. Flow of the game. Pathfinder is played in sessions, during which players gather in person or online for a few hours to play the game. A complete Pathfinder story can be as short as a single session, commonly referred to as a one-shot, or it can stretch for multiple sessions, forming a campaign that might last for months or even years. Yep. Even years. Again, good. You don't have to commit to that. They say that's the exception, not the rule. If the game master enjoys telling the story and keeping the players entertained, and we've gone straight from a 6 to like a 2. The game master is not an entertainer. You're not here to put on the clown makeup and do a funny jig and do funny voices and make sure everybody's entertained, because you're probably not getting paid. 2, it's usually your friends. 3, again, they just mentioned earlier, you're also a player, right? You're there to... As Shauner would say, you're not there to facilitate roleplay, right? You're not a camp counselor, a facilitator. You're just there to roleplay the other side of the table. You're all roleplaying. You're all doing the same thing functionally, but who you're roleplaying, what you're roleplaying, is just a little different. So you're not telling a story. Ideally, you're not, just being an entertainer here. Entertainment comes from what you're doing, but it's not the end-all be-all, right? If you want to be an entertainer, go do stand-up comedy or write a novel, write a story, right? Session can be mostly action. Alternatively, it could include negotiating with a baron for rights to a fort, infiltrating an army of lumbering frost giants, bargaining with an angel for a strand of hair required for an elixir to revive a slain friend. Ultimately, it's up to you and your group to determine what kind of game you're playing, from dungeon exploration to nuanced political drama to anything in between. That's good advice. I wish they would be more specific here, because they're basically saying have a session 0, right? What are the players doing? Let's find out. Everyone involved in the Pathfinder game is the player, including the game master. Yeah, I like that they keep doing that. Before the game begins, players invent a history and personality for their characters, using the rules to determine their characters' statistics, abilities, strengths, weaknesses, etc. The GM might limit the options available during character creation, but the limits are discussed ahead of time so everyone can create interesting characters. Great! In general, the only limits to character concepts are the player's imaginations and the GM's guidelines. See, and they're back on board. I feel like I've play tested with them, so I know they're close to getting it. They have like these glimpses of really, really solid ideas about roleplay. And there are moments that shine through that show that the developers kind of know what they're doing. As far as us in the 4D space go, of course, and that's really cool. Sorry about that. During the game, players describe the actions their characters take and roll dice using their characters' abilities. Great. Although I would just say, you don't need to roll dice unless the GM asks you to. Or you just really know, yeah, I'm attacking the guy. I know I need to roll an attack, right? GM resolves the outcomes of these actions. So far, so good. Some players enjoy acting out, parentheses, or role-playing what they do as if they were their characters, although while others describe their characters' actions as if narrating a story. So, third person, I think, is what they're getting at here. Do whatever feels best. If this is your first experience with a role-playing game, it's recommended that you take on the role of a player, to familiarize yourself with the rules and the world. The GM is in charge of the story and world. Stop using that word. The GM describes all the situations player characters experience in an adventure, considers how the actions of the player characters affect the story, and interprets the roles along the way. GM can create a new adventure, or they can instead rely on a published adventure, using it as a basis for a session and modifying it as needed to accommodate their individual players and group style. Some even run games that combine original and published content. This is a challenge requiring you to adjudicate the rules, narrate the story, and juggle other responsibilities, but it can also be very rewarding and worth all the work required to run a good game. I have mixed feelings on this because they are mentioning, yes, that it's rewarding to try. It is rewarding to put work in. I love that. But they are also putting a little bit of stress on the GM that need not be there, right? You don't need to narrate everything involving the player characters. And I think they know that because they're telling you, just adjudicate the world's, or, narrate the world's reactions to what the players are doing. And hopefully people don't totally glance through this and they do get that, at least that part of it, right? That players should be, it says it right there, it's a single sentence. Players narrate their actions. They say what their character's doing, right? If it's your first time running a game, remember that the only thing that matters is that everyone has a good time. Everything else will come naturally with practice and patience. No, it won't. And it's really only that I can think in the tabletop RPG sphere that we have this idea that just bang your head into the wall and stuff will come natural. No, it won't. If you want to get better at boxing, well, you're going to have to change some stuff. Probably the best way to do it is to go to somebody that already knows how to box. Look up videos of people boxing. And if you watch somebody boxing in a video and they keep getting punched in the face over and over again, you probably know that's not a good one. If you watch somebody role-playing and everybody at their table is going, what? Where were we? You probably know they're not very good at role-playing or running a game. So I don't like this idea that you will just spontaneously erupt in good content because you've been doing it for years or X amount of time. Because you really, really, really could be wasting all of those years. So I wish people were, on one hand, yeah, get more people to GM. It isn't the end of the world if you do something bad. But it is bad to do something bad. Make it a learning experience. Don't just brush it off and go, I'll just keep doing it over and over again and then eventually magically it will become good. No, it doesn't work like that. You need to understand that it probably will be bad the first time you do it. Although you got a good chance of being better than a lot of guys that have been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years. But yeah, it's not going to be spontaneous. It's not going to be natural. So, first part. Does it describe roleplay well? No worse than most other books. There's some gems in here. There's some good bits of advice. They very acutely and simply describe what the players should be doing. On the other hand, they put a little too much emphasis on the GM, and I think they give the wrong idea that the GM is supposed to have too much of a pre-written story and a bunch of stuff here. So I would say, are we looking at a game that better describes to new players how to roleplay than Pathfinder First Edition? Probably not. Without directly comparing them, I would say this is not a fantastic description of how to roleplay. But there are some gems in here. I will give them credit where credit is due. Let me know your thoughts. Next one is going to be on book organization because I'm a lot less optimistic on that one. See you guys.